Last time, we followed Alice's life from her birth through a picture-perfect childhood at the manor right up until the tragic event that changed everything. Today, we're picking up the story from that turning point, the aftermath of the manor incident. Following the attack on the elitist manor, young Alice was taken to White Sand Street Asylum. What happened next was a string of intense, painful experiences that shaped her into the strong, determined woman we know now. Now, I know there were a lot of theories flying around about Alice in part 1, and honestly, not much has changed. If anything, there might be even more questions this time. So again, take all of this with a grain of salt. I've done my best to piece together Alice Deross's story, but some parts are still unclear, at least to me. Still, what we do know is powerful. This chapter is about how Alice became more than just someone who lived through the tragedy. Let's get into it. We still don't have any confirmed details about whether Alice had surviving family. What we do know is that she was an only child. So how she ended up in White Sand Street Asylum remains unclear. According to Orpheus's account, it was so-called relatives who claimed she was mentally unwell and had her committed, but who were these relatives? Were they distant family, legal guardians, or just people acting on someone else's behalf? That part's never made clear. Personally, I don't think it's the most important detail to focus on. Now, about White Sand Street Asylum, I've covered it in another video, but to quickly recap, it was more than just a mental institution. It was a horrific place where cruel experiments were carried out on patients, many of them children. Alice was one of those patients. Her backstory makes it clear she endured both physical and psychological abuse there. She was sent to the asylum shortly after the manor incident in 1887 and remained there until 1895, 8 long years, leaving only when she turned 14. Alice's time in the White Sand Street Asylum is briefly touched upon in her first letter, but this letter itself is open to interpretation. There are a few ways to read its meaning. One theory suggests that Orpheus and Alice exchanged letters with each other, secretly communicating while Alice was institutionalized. However, I personally lean toward a different possibility that Alice wrote the letter to herself as a way to preserve her own fading memories. Given what we know about the White Sand Street Asylum and its cruel experimentation, it's very possible that Alice was subjected to treatments or drugs that caused memory loss, especially considering her hysteria diagnosis. To combat this, perhaps she began writing things down, creating notes and reminders to help her remember what happened before it was erased from her mind. She would then rediscover her own letter and follow the instructions she had written herself, gradually piecing her identity and passed back together. In this way, the letter serves almost as a lifeline to her former self. Of course, this is just a theory. The alternative, that Orpheus somehow managed to write to her directly, does exist within the fandom, but exactly how he would have reached her, especially under such strict asylum conditions, remains unclear to me. Then, in December 1894, something major happened. Orpheus, then 16, tried to adopt Alice. His reasons weren't spelled out, but it's likely he just wanted to get her out of that awful place. Maybe he wanted to care for her, or maybe he intended to continue the treatments mentioned in his lore, though hopefully in a more humane way. But the asylum rejected his request. The head of the asylum claimed that only a blood relative could adopt Alice. Orpheus didn't buy it. He was clearly frustrated. Whether that rule was real or just a cover to keep Alice under their control is still unknown. When Alice turned 14, which is sometime after May 5th, 1895, she was finally released from the White Sand Street Asylum, but this was not the liberation it appeared to be. Instead of finding peace or recovery, she was handed over to a medical professor named Wilhelm Lamb. Records indicate she was taken to Melbourne, Australia. From Melbourne, Alice's ordeal was only beginning. At first glance, it may have seemed like an opportunity for a new life, but in reality, it was the beginning of another nightmare. Rather than treating her as a patient, Lamb treated Alice as a test subject, continuing the cycle of cruel experimentation she had already endured in the asylum. In Ashes of Memory 2, we get a glimpse into this next chapter of Alice's torment. Among Lamb's research team was a scientist named Sam Bourbon, although not confirmed, who was seen administering a drug to Alice, one that closely resembles mnemosyne. Mnemosyne, in the game, is a memory-suppressing compound, and its purpose is as sinister as it sounds: to erase a person's memory. It's possible that Sam used it on Alice to wipe out her trauma, or perhaps to make room for something else entirely. While this is speculative due to the limited lore available, the signs point to something even more disturbing. Another substance mentioned is siren song, a drug designed to induce hallucinations. So, when used together, mnemosyne to erase and siren song to manipulate, it becomes increasingly plausible that Alice's memories were not only erased, but replaced. In other words, Alice may have been forced to live a fabricated reality, one not of her own choosing. This theory is supported by Alice's first letter, in which she repeatedly writes, "Who are you?" a haunting refrain that feels less like a question for someone else and more like a plea to remember someone long lost. Perhaps she wasn't trying to recall someone else. She tried to remember herself. This kind of desperation suggests that Alice may have been struggling to hold on to fragments of her identity, memories erased by drugs, trauma, or even deliberate manipulation. Her being made to forget the past might not have been accidental. It could have been part of a larger, more insidious plan to rebuild her mind from the ground up, reshaping her into someone useful, someone with a purpose crafted by others. In that sense, the letter becomes more than just a note. It's a mirror, a clue, and a survival mechanism all in one. A way for Alice to reclaim herself before she is completely rewritten. But for now, the bigger question is, what's the purpose of Alice being made to forget? According to scattered pieces of lore, Wilhelm Lamb wasn't just any professor. He's known to be the leader of a covert, powerful organization referred to only as YKW, or you know who. Whatever this group's true objectives are, Alice was seemingly groomed to serve their interests. Her fragmented mind, manipulated memories, and psychological conditioning weren't mistakes. They were tools to mold her into something useful. Again, these are all theories in nature. To be honest, with my limited understanding, I could not find any definitive explanation for this, aside of fragmented clues and theories. Perhaps in the upcoming future, we will see more clues, or better, a definitive answer for it. Currently, we don't have enough leads to fully understand the You Know Who organization, or YKW for short. From the scattered clues we do have, it seems the group was heavily involved in both espionage and medical research. There's no definitive information about when the organization was established, but one thing's for sure. By the time Alice was taken to Melbourne at age 14, the organization already existed. As for their headquarters, it's still a mystery. Wilhelm Lamb took Alice to Australia, but other known members of the organization appear to be from Great Britain. So, overall, YKW is as shady as its name implies, operating globally and engaging in highly secretive activities. If we take a closer look at Alice's traits, she was described as having a talent for disguise. This ties in directly with the organization's known specialty, espionage. And she's not the only one. One prominent member of the organization is actually a disguise expert in the game, the Faro lady, Evelyn Mora. We could do an entire video just on Evelyn, but for now, here's what you need to know. Evelyn was a master of disguise and served as a trainer within the YKW organization. She trained a group of women referred to as Faro ladies, and two that we currently know of are Martha B. Hamphil and Alice Deross. Alice was trained by Evelyn to become a Faro lady, which explains her skill in disguise. It's plausible that this talent helped her escape and return to England when she turned 21. That means the escape happened on or after May 5th, 1902. Throughout her time in Melbourne, Alice endured a harsh cycle of experimentation and espionage training. Her backstory even mentions a mysterious voice that kept pulling her back from the brink of collapse. We don't know what that voice was, but personally, I like to believe it was Orpheus's promise, echoing in her memory, that they would meet again.
Shh! Don't be afraid. We'll meet again.
Still, because Alice had kept detailed notes for herself during her time in the asylum and later in Melbourne, she gradually began to piece her memories back together. Through them, she remembered who she was, what had happened to her, and, most importantly, what she needed to do. Guided by the clues she had written to herself, perhaps during moments of clarity, Alice learned to tamper with her medication, discovered the location of the key that kept her locked away, and quietly planned her escape. With careful precision and unwavering resolve, Alice finally broke free and returned to England at the age of 21. As an adult, Alice grew into an elegant and intelligent woman. She's tough and brave, gifted in observation and disguise, and has an excellent ability to speak and analyze situations. She leaves a strong impression on others and can sharply read people's emotions. However, due to the early drug experimentation and her pathological history, her fear response became significantly dulled, and her physical endurance surpassed the average person's. After returning to England, she began working as an investigative journalist under anonymity. Her primary goals were to uncover the truth behind the tragedy that ruined her life, and to find her childhood friend, Orpheus, the one who had promised her they'd meet again. She didn't just write stories. She built a close-knit circle of allies, contacts who aided her investigations. Some of these connections are subtly hinted at through the 6 birthday letters of several characters. It's also implied that Alice traveled to various places investigating the lives and backgrounds of the participants involved in the manor game. How she managed to do that, though, remains a bit unclear. Some individuals likely helped her along the way, but the sheer scope of her investigation is both impressive and puzzling. Did she really travel across the world within the 60-day time frame granted to each participant? Or perhaps she conducted these investigations after her time in the manor had concluded? I can't say for sure, and therefore, I cannot theorize about it. Moving on to the story, Alice's return to England wasn't all smooth. In her deduction quests, we learn that someone, or possibly a shadowy organization, was watching her. The conclusion of that investigation? A recommendation to eliminate her, which can arguably be interpreted as a threat to her life. As for who was behind the surveillance, that part's still a mystery. I don't even have a solid guess. Some think it was Orpheus himself watching over Alice. But if he wanted to protect her, why would he also try to eliminate her? That theory doesn't fully add up. Others say it was you know who, the shadowy organization Alice was in before. That's a bit more believable, but there's not much solid evidence pointing directly to them either. And then there's the idea that an entirely different group was behind it. If so, I have no clue who they were. With so few concrete details, I can't say anything for sure. But if you've come across more information, definitely let me know. Anyway, let's move on to what happened next. One day, as Alice prepared to investigate the Golden Cave mine incident, a female colleague came to her with unexpected news. She had received an invitation to the mysterious Olitas manor. Though Alice couldn't fully remember what had happened there, fragments of her memories still lingered, faint impressions of the manor, haunting whispers of the past, and her childhood friend, whose name or face she could no longer remember. Still, the promise they once shared burned quietly within her. The invitation to the manor might hold the answers she had been chasing for years, so when the opportunity came, she took it. Assuming her colleague's identity, Alice accepted the invitation and stepped into the shadows of Olitas Manor, determined to uncover the truth about the incident, and perhaps to finally see Orpheus again. What unfolded next is chronicled in Ashes of Memory Parts 1 and 2 and continues in The Cage of Yesteryear, which picks up the thread of the main storyline. Since Alice's lore is still unfolding, then the version shared in this video may continue to grow as more revelations come to light. If that happens, I'll be sure to make an updated deep dive when the time comes. In the meantime, if you have thoughts, questions, or extra context to share, feel free to drop them in the comments. I'd love to hear your theories too. Thank you for watching. This is Silmina signing off.